And here we have Dave Boyechko.
Oh, shucks, go on. Okay. Most of you have heard me speak before, and I usually find something cool or funky to talk about. Usually there's a new case that comes up. I was going to talk about cemetery law, because for a while there, I was the foremost expert in cemetery law in the world, probably, because I had 3 cases in a row dealing with cemeteries and such.
Cemetery law.
Yeah, cemetery law. So, but then I was trying to figure out a topic, and I figured I should actually give something helpful and useful.
Yeah. Something happy?
No, not happy. Not happy, because lawyers aren't generally happy. Okay, and we don't deal with happy people for the most part. So, and you guys know what type of law I do, and as most of you know, but not personally, so I've been involved in a large number of family law matters. And my comment I make to people is typically, I've been divorced over 1,000 times because I've been involved in more than 1,000 divorces. Over 25 years, that's 40 years. You've easily done that. So I get to learn a lot about my clients because I have to. If I don't learn, I can't do the job right. So when we do the interview process, they're interviewing me, I'm interviewing them. So we're trying to figure out, make sure we're a good fit. But I need to know about them. I can't do a good job unless I know about them. And they have to tell me their innermost secrets. And what's going on and what's bothering them. And I have to ask them questions that they normally wouldn't answer for anyone else. And one of the things I found is that I always ask this question, because obviously they're separating for a reason, and I will typically ask them, has there been any violence in the relationship? And you'd be surprised how many times that there is, and nobody knows about it. So I talk to them about that. I get some details, and I also, even if there isn't any violence, I always recommend my clients get some counseling, especially if it's free and they have an EAP program. It's always a good idea to have somebody else on your side other than your lawyer, because I'm a really expensive counselor. I will listen, but it's probably too expensive. There's other people that are better trained for it and cost less. Okay. So because domestic violence happens more often than people think, you probably all know somebody that's in that kind of a situation, and you might hear something from them, and you might not know what to tell them. So what I'm going to do is just give you a little bit of a background about how it works and what options people have. And since, I guess, 1998, Manitoba, we're one of the cutting edge, I guess, in Canada as far as domestic violence. And you might remember we used to have that zero tolerance, and you phone the police and the cops would show up and people get arrested, which was good in a way, but also bad in a way, because it made people afraid to call the police. So there's this step where lawyers come involved, and the Domestic Violence and Stalking Act was passed in '98, and that gives a lot of protection and leeway for people, and you don't have to charge somebody. And that's typically a question. Do you want to have them charged? No. Do you need protection? I don't know, maybe. And then we talk about what we can do. So the Domestic Violence and Stalking Act deals with a couple of situations. It deals with domestic violence and stalking. So there's 2 different types of situations, and it applies to 2 different types of people. So if you're stalked, who can apply? Anybody can. So you don't have to know the person that's stalking you. The law actually provides that if you talk to the police and they know who's stalking you, they can give you the name so you can get an order. So, and typically it's people that get obsessed with people, and that's one of the reasons why this legislation was put in place, because there wasn't a lot people could do. If they weren't committing a crime, you couldn't really do anything to help people. So that's one of the reasons that was done. Domestic violence, on the other hand, is different. Not everybody can get it. You have to be either married, common law, dating, had sex with that person. Doesn't specify how long you have to be dating. 1 date, I guess, is good enough. Or in a family relationship. So that means it could be kids, parents, step people, and the law, if you read the definition of family relationship, it's anybody related by blood or marriage. So it's pretty wide. So it's available for anybody who finds himself in that kind of a situation. Now there's 2 types of ways that you can do this. There's something called the protection order, and there's something called the prevention order. And they're 2 different animals for different reasons. Protection orders are done by a JP, so Justice of the Peace. Typically people go in, fill out some forms and go in front of the JP and swear under oath and give evidence. You have to give the whole story. If you don't give the whole story, you can actually get it tossed out and get in trouble. So you can't just leave out part of it because you're doing it without notice. The other person doesn't know this is happening. Okay, so you got to be forthright and honest and give your information. Now, what happens is if they believe that a reasonable person would have reason to fear or that domestic violence has taken place, they can actually grant the order right there. And then it's effective that moment. But the other person doesn't know about it yet. So once they get served with the papers by the police generally, that's when it actually takes effect on them. And if you breach a protection order, you get charged. So there is some protection, and it gives people that comfort level. Okay. Now some people can't go. They're too nervous or too afraid to go talk to somebody. You can actually get a peace officer, a police officer, RCMP, or your lawyer can do it. And they can actually do it over the phone. So they can actually call the court and give evidence on your behalf, provided that you've authorized them to do that. I actually had a client that couldn't do it, and the police did it for her. So, and the order was obtained. And that was a stalking one. It wasn't the domestic violence. It was a neighbor that was constantly harassing her. And she was able to get an order. So, the domestic violence that they cover is things like, either actually causing bodily harm or damaging property, or threatening to. So both of those things are covered. It also covers emotional or psychological abuse, which is kind of hard to prove, but it is covered in the legislation. So anybody that feels like somebody is causing them harm, threatening to cause them harm, or is doing damage even by, that whole emotional abuse, won't let them talk to people, won't, controlling, they have the ability to get relief, which they didn't have before this legislation was put into place. So what do these orders do? They can stop somebody from following you, communicating with you, going any place you might go, your home, your work, place of worship, school. They can have them removed from where you live. So if you're living with that person, come and have them removed. Take away their firearms, which is a good thing. And if you don't want to go where they are, it'll allow you to go get your things. Or give them a chance to get their things and get out. Okay. So with protection orders, they usually, like I said, they can be done, they're generally done in person with a lawyer or police officer. They last for 3 years. So they're not forever, but before the 3 years comes up, you can apply for a new one if you still have a reasonable fear. And I've actually been in situations where we've had them removed for clients, where they've been in that kind of situation where they're still not good, and it was a fairly serious situation. And the thing about protection orders is there's a 20-day window for the person to get served with the papers to apply to have it set aside. And setting it aside means as if it didn't exist, and then there's a brand new hearing. And that's a balance of probabilities as to who the judge would believe. Prevention orders are a little different. It's not a justice of the peace. It's the Court of Queen's Bench, so it's a Queen's Bench judge. They can be granted with or without notice. It's a little more formal. Typically, lawyers get involved as part of that, but they can last forever. So they don't have to have a time limit. So sometimes that's important. They are wider in scope. So if somebody is following you around, they can have their driver's license revoked or not renewed. So the judge has power to do things like that. It actually can give you compensation. So if the person that's been threatening you or causing you domestic violence or harm causes you to move, they'll pay for your moving costs. You need therapy, cover therapy costs, even your lawyer costs. All that stuff can be covered under the prevention order. So it's a step up, and it's a little more formal, but there's more relief that's available. Even something like an alarm system. You need to get an alarm system because you're afraid of this person. You can ask the court that the person that's causing fear has caused you to request this relief, pay for the cost of that alarm. So it gives you a whole bigger avenue of relief that you can seek so you can feel safe again. So that's the whole purpose behind all this stuff. Isn't to make people's lives difficult, is to make people's lives better. So yes, it's going to inconvenience one person, but it's going to make the other person feel better about themselves and feel like they can move on. And I find that, like I said, it happens so often, and I find myself talking to so many clients about it. I thought it would be a good idea to share that with you, all of you, and that if you know anybody who's in this situation, if you're in this situation, that there's help available, and the services that the government's put in, and then there's counseling service available, victim services. All of this is there to help people cope with and get through this. So that's what I want to share with you guys today. Any questions?
I've got two questions if you have the time for two questions. Okay. So the first question, I don't know if that's related to family law or not, but and I might have a potential client after hearing you, but I was working in this transportation company, and I met this driver, and this is a question that I had for the last, like, I don't know, for how many years, but his son went to a club, and his son was like 23 or 24 years old, right? He met a girl over there, and the actual age of the girl was 16, 17 years or something like that, right? They end up making love and stuff, and then this girl actually dragged him to the court, and this guy, what this truck driver told me was end up serving some sentence or something like that, right? But the question over there is like, how would a person know that you are 16, 17, 18? Because at a club, you can present your fake ID, and you know, obviously in the heat of the moment, you just don't know. You will never see the ID of a person to know. So what in this scenario, right? That's the first question. The second question is, when you were talking about like a person felt threatened and this and that, right? So in the office scenarios, we have seen that the boss actually either raises his voice or actually threatens an employee, right? In that scenario, it's about the employee, how he feels, or it's about the actual scenario that happens. Maybe the boss just raised his voice. He did not threaten the employee. So.
I'm sorry, we're out of time.
Both of those situations are different. They're outside this,
Yeah.
but the first one sounds like it was he was charged, and there's some
Statutory rape.
yeah. I actually had a client who, and this is before they changed the age of consent. He met a girl in the bar who was 14.
14?
Yeah, he met her in the bar,
In a
and
bar?
they found out later. And
Yeah,
they
they
called me
called
to
it a
panic,
fake
and at the time, nothing ended up happening. But obviously, that kind of thing can happen,
Yeah.
right? And the second situation, there is legislation that deals with employee safety, and there's sometimes human rights issues. So if it's because of if somebody's just generally a bully, that's different. But if they are picking on somebody because of age or sex, or race or disability or any reason, that's generally covered through that. And I've actually been involved in a couple of cases like that as well. So yeah, there's always something you can do when somebody's bothering you. Sometimes you can do more. Yes.
If a couple's separating,
Okay, I'm sorry, we're going to have to really, we're running way late today, so.
I'll ask later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks
Speak to
everybody.
Dave afterwards.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay, you were listening to Dave Boyechko from BNI Accelerators in Manitoba. Thanks for listening.